Firstly, I'd like to welcome our guests today from Swinburne University, Chancellor John Pollaers and Pascale Cuesta, Vice-Chancellor. Thank you both very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us, Caroline. Good to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Vice-Chancellor, if I could start with you. The higher education sector has experienced much disruption this year. How are you preparing students to overcome or lean into the changes that are occurring?
Well, that's actually interesting because as traumatic as this pandemic year has been, I think it has only precipitated something that was long coming. The sector was really ripe for some kind of disruption. The disruption was happening. And in fact, Swinburne University of Technology was very much at the forefront of what might be the way the sector would operate, with much more flexible delivery, with online learning in particular. So I think what has happened is possibly for our students, they have had a moment of reckoning, because without really having to choose, they were sort of thrown into a world where online delivery of the material would actually be something that they had to get used to. And that has been for them, I think, quite both confronting, but also a revelation of sorts. So I think, in fact, our change, our adaptation is going to be facilitated by the fact that there has been such a rapid reckoning of the fact that education would be quite a different thing in the future than it was in the past.
Fantastic, thank you. And if you think about anticipating the changes that will occur in the sector in 2021, I mean, what do you see as the key challenges, and how is Swinburne going to address them?
So I think from my point of view, what this is providing us is a fantastic opportunity to differentiate. I think for a couple of decades, maybe more, there has been, certainly in the Australian context, a sort of great degree of homogeneity, everybody trying to emulate the kind of the universities that were ranked in front of them and trying to do very much the same thing. In marketing terms, we call that a Me Too strategy. I think there is really now an opening up of the sector and a realization that people can be successful in very different ways. And for Swinburne University of Technology, I think we've benefited because the case for technology has been obvious for everyone, whereas people perhaps before tended to overstate the threat to society in particular that technology could present. I think this year has demonstrated the benefit that technology can offer to society. I mean, if people had not been able to connect virtually, how on earth would they have connected when Melbourne was, for all intents and purposes, shut down for 3 months? So I think the case for the role of technology to improve society, to connect people, to advance knowledge and to share in a way that possibly was not able to be imagined, I think that's a great strength. And I think there is an opportunity now for universities to say, well, if that is what the future looks like, if that is the way that people can share, if that's the way that people can collaborate with the help of technology, then some university, and certainly mine will be at the front, will think about, well, there is a different way to deliver education and to make an impact. And that's very much this orthogonal path that we want to take.
Thank you. Can I turn to you now, Chancellor? How do you think your background in industry has helped shape your vision for the future of Swinburne? And how do you plan to take that vision forward?
Look, I think that Pascale's point is absolutely right. This industry, higher education, has been ripe for transformation for quite some time. And it's given the opportunity to sort of deeply reflect upon the things that are important. I think that from my perspective, having been involved in leading major company turnarounds around the world over many years, it has really tuned me into the absolute essential first step, and that's really understanding, as Pascale says, your relevance. What's the thing that you are trying to impact in the world, and that you're assembling, if you like, your team to do so? And I think that it's that kind of focus on a deep sense of purpose and then a resolve to move to action is probably the thing that I'm most excited about with Swinburne. I mean, Pascale joined us in the middle of the lockdown, so already we've got somebody who's been able to really stand back and have a have a look at the university without being thrust into the traditional ways it was operating, but to think about it deeply and in a different way. I've seen the need of industry over time to gather and to deploy the best thinking from science, the best thinking from technology, to try and find the best talent to help drive your objective forward. And I think it's brought for us a real resolve at Swinburne that we are going to be a different university. You know, we've said that we're going to be a sleeves rolled up university. We've said we're going to be a more deeply engaged, and already are, than many other universities as it is with industry. But then to really engage our students with industry, with research, to not just have them equipped for the work that they face, but to be able to go out and shape the businesses that they join and be true members and shapers of a better society. You know, we talk a little bit now about, and we talk a lot about Industry 4.0, but we are starting also to talk about Society 5.0, you know, society where we balance economic growth and the drive for technological change with inclusion, with social equity, and with sustainability. And I think the opportunity to think about ourselves as one of the largest high-tech businesses in the country, deeply connected with the community, differentiates us. And that's the kind of vision that I have for us and the way we do connect with our society.
Thank you. I'd just like to turn now to, when you were seeking a new Vice Chancellor, you were looking for someone who could really think globally and really create partnerships at a local, regional and international level. The other thing you were looking for was real strengths in commercial acumen. I mean, why are these things so important to you?
I think we do. Part of that disruption that higher education has gone through is really the recognition that it no longer can depend upon government for its future, and in fact, even for its funding. And a recognition that in many ways, that if we work more closely with industry and we work more closely with the best of our international colleagues, then in many respects, we'll lead a vision that's potentially far greater than that of any individual government, because we are working across sectors and we're working deeply. So to have a leader, and I'm delighted to say in Pascale, we absolutely found that leader who's bold, who's courageous, who can roll their sleeves up, who engages deeply and broadly with stakeholders, who focuses on putting a big, bold vision out there and then aligning all to its achievement, is what's required, whether it be in large high-tech business, large commercial enterprise, and now obviously in higher education. I think the thing that excites me about bringing that kind of skill set, that kind of energy, and for me bringing Pascale to Swinburne, is what we can achieve together with that kind of focus. You know, we've seen through the COVID pandemic a greater level of respect in some areas for public authority and in all areas for the application of science to solve these large-scale problems. And I think more and more we need to look to our universities as those safe places to go, to ask the questions, to explore, to, if you like, have those no-regret experiences, to make sure you've left nothing on the table, to have a journey worth having. And in many ways, I think that's why our search was so important, to bring those kinds of skills together. And again, I couldn't be more happy with the outcome.
How do you anticipate you're going to work together in transforming the journey for students? I mean, how will the experience at Swinburne really shape the outcomes for future careers that you touched on earlier, Chancellor, and contribute to the needs of industry? So perhaps Vice-Chancellor first.
Well, from my point of view, I think that relationship between the Chancellor and the Vice-Chancellor is absolutely critical. There has to be a great deal of trust between the Council and between the senior management. And I've got to say, if you are going to try to attempt a bold and courageous strategy, the one thing you do want is you want the council to believe that you can do it, and you want your chancellor to have your back. And so, this partnership is actually going to be critical to the success of the strategy. I think it would be impossible for a vice chancellor to do this if you didn't have a committed set of people on council, and if you didn't have a committed person in the chancellor's role, because it will take courage, and it will take, it will be a rocky road at times, and there will be transformation, and some of it will be painful, and not everything will work. And that's the other thing. We have to trust that we're doing things in the right direction. But if we stumble along the way, or if there are some obstacles, we need to have the resilience, the fortitude to kind of say, no, this is the way we want to go, because that is the way where we think we can deliver value. And I couldn't do that without a chancellor.
And Chancellor?
Well, I think I've just been told. I agree with Pascale. I've been a public company CEO a number of times now, and it shaped my view on the ways and the role that boards should play. But I don't see that the organisation reports to the council, and nor does it report to me. We're there to help and support Pascale in the achievement of the vision that she sets for the university, and to help support clearing the blockages, enabling higher levels of risk to be taken, and hopefully bringing some experience to bear in bringing that about. So I certainly take a view that we're there, if you like, to be an accelerant and a catalyst by enabling us to take greater risk. Now, obviously, there's always an important governance role to play, but that does not at any stretch need to be something that does anything other than give more confidence to push forward more rapidly. And I think it's really vital that we think about it this way.
If you think about the future, I mean, what do universities need to do to survive, but also to thrive? What does it look like from your perspective? Perhaps to you, Vice-Chancellor, first.
Well, it seems to me that now there's a much more strident question as to what is the value of universities. If you look at the political debate at the moment in Australia, and particularly has the impact on the revenue source of the universities have been, really affected by the travel ban. I think what universities need to do is to actually affirm and demonstrate their value to society. I think once upon a time, we probably could take it for granted that people had a lot of respect and that people understood that universities were important players, if you like, in the way society works. But I think we are now coming to a somewhat more focused time where universities will not be supported, they will not get political capital if they just claim to be important without actually demonstrating how it is that they are making a difference. So, at the moment, there's a great deal of demand for the kind of education and upskilling that I discussed before. If we are not able to do it in a way that serves the purpose of the learners rather than the purpose of the universities, we will be called to action, and we will be possibly told that there are some private providers who can do it in a much more flexible way, so why should we keep universities at all? Likewise with the research. I mean, the one blessing of the pandemic is that people have realized just the quality and the intensity of the research that happens in the labs. And the reason, if we get a vaccine, it will be just unheard of how rapidly that vaccine would have been developed. And that's only possible because we've got an army of researchers who do nothing else but work in labs just to think about how to advance knowledge and science in that area. So I think there is the need for us to not rest on our laurel. It's not because we've been the longest enduring type of organization from the Middle Age to today. The future is a different place, and to deserve a place in that future, we need to demonstrate value, and we need to do that daily. We need to do that with our industry partner. We need to deliver research that speaks to their business, not speak to our business, and the two are actually not mutually exclusive. Very often people say, oh, the problem with working with industry is that, researchers want to publish papers. Well, you can publish papers and work with industry. It's all about engagement and being able to define early what each of the partner wants to get out of the association, and then making sure that you deliver it. So this accountability piece, which is to not just take the money and run with it to do the things that we think we should do, but to sit down and say, right, there is an investment piece here. This is what is going to be delivered. There is true value in this. We are investing human capital. We are investing in the infrastructure. You know, what are you bringing to the table, and what will it take for you to recognize that this is a good investment for your business as well as for our operations? And, you know, multiple parties in that equation. Government wants us to do some things. Industry wants us to do some things. Parents want us to do some things. And we've got to listen to it all, because our relevance needs to be clear to all of you stakeholders, or we will be criticized and we will be questioned and we will be eventually at risk.
And Chancellor?
Look, I agree with Pascale. I think the time for just being another university is gone. You know, universities have to know their purpose, they have to know their value, they need to be clear about where and how they demonstrate their impact on the planet. And they've got to be, in some ways, a noble and a neutral source where people can come to ask questions and to have a better understanding of the world. Now, all that means that we've got to be relevant to the needs of people, and we've got to be relevant to the needs of entire community in this rapidly changing world, not just in technology terms, but in societal beliefs and in societal ways of operating. I think that that it starts in many ways with reimagining ourselves. So in Swinburne, we are one of the largest high-tech companies in the country. And we need to think about ourselves as not just responding, but to shaping and to leading. But I found over time, and that I am confident, I have no doubt about Swinburne's ability to thrive and its sense of understanding. But universities in general need to believe in themselves. You know, they are relevant, but they can't be out there with ponderous messages, and they've got to be bold. You know, when I was a CEO, I would have delighted if a vice chancellor knocked on my door, instead of saying, you know, is there any way we can work together, came and gave me an opinion, told me I wasn't running the business well, or told me where it could be done in a different way. So I think we've got to really have faith and strength of belief in what we are doing. We are ahead of the game, and don't let the narrative be driven or written by government, but start to write that narrative ourselves. But as I say, it all starts with understanding very clear about your own purpose and resolve to have an impact.
I really wanted to thank you both for joining us today. It's been a really interesting and enlightening conversation, and fantastic to hear from you, and really wonderful to have your contribution to Observe. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Thanks, Pascale.
Thank you, John.